Hey everybody, welcome back to Pun Fun, where we have fun with the puns. My name is Ryan, and we have a crazy interview for you. Today we're here with George Michail. Hey George Michail, how are you today?
I'm awesome, man. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And George is actually a local talent, so here in Canada. However, I'm based in Montreal, and you're based in Vancouver, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm in Kelowna, but yeah, right
okay.
close to Vancouver too.
Oh, sorry. I'm in British Columbia, but right. Yeah, in Kelowna. Right. Awesome. So George Michail, is that your actual name, or is this an alias that you use as an artist?
No, this is my actual name.
All right.
George Michail, yeah.
And can you give us a bit more about like your background, your nationality?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Greek Canadian.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'm a comic book writer. I've been making comics since about 2018. I always wanted to be in the comic book industry. Like as a kid, I had a copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way.
Wow.
And I wore that book out, dude. Just always loved this stuff, but I was really nervous about putting myself out there, so I never did. And
right.
And then I was in a big car accident a few years ago, and I was like, you know what, life is short. Let's try and get after the things that I've always wanted to do, and try and see if this thing can actually happen. Wow. And so just getting out of my own way was kind of my biggest obstacle, really.
That's crazy. And usually one of our questions is actually, what is it that got you to push something from being a hobby to the professional? I guess this is the answer. Was there any other elements that before the accident that was kind of, daunting you, or that you knew like this is something you really wanted to do, but you just needed that extra, I guess in this case, kick?
Yeah, well, a lot of it was like fear of failure. So I was really just nervous about putting myself out there creatively, and someone saying, "Oh, that thing stinks," and then just so that was probably my biggest thing. Another kind of push for me too was like I've worked with adults with developmental disabilities for 20 years, and kind of specialized working with people with like extreme behavioral issues. And after 20 years of that, I was like, yes, I'd like to do something a little different and kind of more creative. And so that was also kind of a motivating factor in getting into comic books.
That's crazy. And so just the pre-show, before we got into this, you were mentioning that you are also a big collector. You yourself have your own collection, commissions as well. Who would you say were your earlier influences growing up?
Oh, well, for writing, I really love Michail Bendis's style. Just the way he kind of decompresses things and takes his time with it. I love Kevin Williamson. He's a writer that worked on like Scream and Dawson's Creek and things like that.
Cue the meme.
And of course, and Jeff Loeb too as well. I love his writing style and just the way that he writes for artists and kind of builds towards like big dramatic moments and tries to curate his story for the artist that he's working with.
Okay. And you mentioned before it was the how to draw for Marvel. So how do you say it? Was there a transition between storytelling and drawing, or was it something you mishmashed together and you've decided in the end this was more the how do you say it, your stronger point, and you wanted to pursue the writing more than the drawing?
Yeah, so I did decide I was just going to make my own comic book at one point, and I was like, all right, I'm going to do this. And I spent 6 months writing my script, and I did 6 drafts of it. I did like a 6-issue miniseries, and I got it to a point where I was really happy with it, and I was like, yeah, I can put this out there. And then I sat down to draw it.
Right.
And I was working on it. I was a pretty decent artist when I was a kid, but my skills haven't really improved since I was like 11 years old. So, because I haven't really picked up the pencil all that much.
Right.
And
so you do great remarks, by the way. We got the cover of Darkness for the remarks.
They're terrible. But I figure people like it. No, so I realized like I need professional help on this to get it to a quality that I would be happy with.
Okay, great. And so going into your writing process, how do you get started? So for example, we will talk about Resilient 2 in a couple of minutes, but if we go based off Resilient 1, which we kind of got a bit of the backstory, not complete backstory, but the fact that our main characters also have certain disabilities as well, which they're seeing ability through that, through their, upbringing, but also their own obstacles and, well, being resilient, of course. How do you set up something on a large scale, but having it segmented for, your mini series, for example? So how would you get volume 1 in? Because just before you get into that, issue 1 is jam packed with, so much, and it's there's so much going on. However, you do put it in a way that it's very easy to digest for the reader. You do have to read it once or twice just to get the the whole globe of it, for sure. But that being said, how do you segment your complete work and then your writing?
Yeah, so it starts off with like concept and just like the bigger world, and it's so crazy because like, I was actually just talking with a writing partner of mine yesterday about this. And it's like we do all this like planning and like all this like big scope stuff and where things are going, and we're plotting this thing out to like this massive world. And then when you sit down to write it, you're writing down just like a conversation between two people, and it's just like one moment at a time. But you start off with the huge concept, and then you just break it down into like the smallest moments. And so you do need to know where you're going and what is the end game. But when you actually sit down to write it, it's just like, one moment at a time.
Okay, cool. And a lot of this seems, usually for comic books, it's very surreal. Like, for example, your cover of Darkness, it's very surreal, very fantastic. However, for Resilient, it's very true to life. Is any of these moments or characters based on people or events that have happened in your own reality?
Yeah, so in Resilient, so for those who don't know, Resilient is a story of a judo teacher that loses her arms in a demining expedition in Cambodia. She does gain cybernetic prosthetics eventually, which she uses along with her kung fu skills and her katana to go and rescue her husband from a sordid past. And so all these things are kind of coming into play. And in the first issue, you see her lose her arms, and in issue 2, we see her journey from becoming a double amputee to just becoming a person that can function in society. And that's like the story of issue 2, because it was really important for me to have a character that could stand on her own, and that like her arms, these like superpowers of hers, isn't what makes her and isn't what makes her strong. And so you see in issue 2 just how tough this woman is without those arms. And then she gets them, and that was really important to me. As far as like is this thing based on any real moments? Yeah, there's bits of like my own kind of history there. When I was 15 years old, I had a heart condition called pericarditis, and I was flown to like a Vancouver Children's Hospital by like a helicopter in the middle of the night to have like emergency surgery, and I was in isolation. And so I went through having a hard time just kind of getting around physically at first after the operation, and that really stuck with me. And then I had the injury where I broke my back in the car accident. And then our couple that in the comic book are struggling with fertility issues, and they're trying to have a baby. And so these are all kind of things that have happened in my life that I wanted to kind of explore through comic books. And I think it makes the characters more real, more relatable.
Yeah, absolutely.
The main character, her name is Jolanda. She's named after my wife.
Okay.
So my wife's name is Jolanda as well. And
is she also kickass as well? Exactly. There you go. Very cool. And one of the styles that I've noticed reading Cover of Darkness, but also Resilient, is that you usually have kind of like two storylines going at the same time. So you have, for example, in Cover of Darkness, you have the kind of the gypsies that are having their own storyline, the sisters that are going, on their own adventure. At the same time, you have the Count as well, who's kind of recruiting, but at the same time feeding. And you would expect him to be a certain type, given his aesthetic the way he is. However, you do learn that, certain grounds and morals are very hard to break, even after having been transformed. And then in Resilient, you have also this dual storytelling that's going on. You have Jolanda's story with her husband as well, but then you also have this second storyline that's going on where you're getting the mob, you're getting the cartel, well, not cartel, but you're getting like kind of like the mafia as well involved. And that's what I meant when there's so much going on, but at the same time, you don't lose yourself at any moment, and you kind of know that these stories at some point may intertwine, but even if they don't, it's well written in a way that you can still follow it. It was this, well, first of all, where else have you seen such writing, or is this something that you kind of picked up on and you've seen that it's such like it was such a, what do you call it, a great way to express, you know, your stories?
Yeah, I think it's around where you follow like different groups of characters and then, you know, they'll intertwine later. Yeah, with Cover of Darkness, it gets really crazy as the series progresses. That family gets broken apart and we follow each one of them. And so that was similar to Game of Thrones, right? Where we take a family that starts off together and then we splinter them off and then you follow them. And then it gets really fun when you see that the family members reconnect down the road. Cover of Darkness I write with my co-writer Chris Cam, and it's a massive story. It's out from Source Point Press right now. You can get it at your local comic book stores, and the graphic novel will be in stores August 31st.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, but that is a big story. It's a 6-issue miniseries, but then we have 2 follow-up miniseries as well. So it's like a trilogy of stories. So,
and will those be like side quests, or will those be canon to the story?
Oh,
well, I mean,
it's all following our main characters,
right? Okay,
through that, yeah.
So as he's mentioned, there is a Kickstarter currently going on, and this is with Resilient 2, which was a great success, by the way, and it's fully funded, I think, within the first day. It's actually side by side with White Widow, so you definitely want to jump onto that. He can actually give you some more details on exactly what you get when you pledge for the Resilient 2. So what is it they have in store for that Kickstarter?
Yeah, so Resilient issue 2 is partnered with White Widow number 7. We were fully funded in like 45 minutes. And yeah, there's about 3 weeks left on the campaign as we're recording today. Yeah, and what's cool is we're also offering the first issue as well. So you can get Resilient issue 1 and 2 if you want to see Jolanda's adventure here, where she becomes a double amputee, gets those cybernetic arms, and then eventually goes into this rescue mode where she has to go and save her husband from the cartel. We've got some incredible variant covers that are only available like through this Kickstarter. We have covers by like Ed Benes, who worked on Justice League, Ali Garza from Supergirl. Yeah, and actually this is, I'll give you an exclusive. Just today, we're announcing that Jamie Tyndall, co-creator of White Widow, is doing our cover for Resilient.
That's crazy. That's amazing. And I mean, great, cross help across. That's amazing. Well, there you go, guys. You guys heard it here first. That's and is that going to be an add-on that they'll be able to put on, or is that going to be an available cover?
Yeah, it's getting added on, I think, later today.
Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. So if you haven't already pledged, of course, we'd highly suggest you check it out. It's going to be in the links below. So it'll take you directly to the Kickstarter, and you can go ahead and choose your Resilient 2 cover. And with the add-ons that you prefer, you can also check out White Widow as well. Are they able to add on the White Widow onto Resilient, or are they once you've stuck onto one, that's pretty much all you can go forward, or you can mix and match as you go ahead?
Yeah, this Kickstarter is pretty interesting. You actually just kind of choose your amount, and then you pick your books later. So if you want to, buy a $10 book, you can buy a $10 book, and then you choose that $10 book later. And then if you want to go and add anything on, you can add anything on at the end. So
all right, very cool. And so what else is in the works for George Michail?
Oh, I've got a bunch of projects that I'm working on right now. One thing that's really cool is coming out in October. We have a one-shot called Cover of Darkness Origins. Okay. And so we're spotlighting some kind of supporting characters, like our vampire character from issue 1,
Right.
Orlok. We see his origin story, and he starts off as like an elf, and he encounters Dracula,
Really?
and there's dragons, and it's awesome. And there's also a Bride of Frankenstein story in there, and you see, we see where how she started out. So there's three
Wow.
stories in that one shot that comes out in October. So
And would
be on
this
the lookout
be
for that?
and would they be able to get this to their local comic book store, or would it be through a campaign?
Nope, that one's going to be direct to retailers. It gets fun because if you like the first, so each issue has like its own monster origin story in it. So like issue 2 has like a mummy story, and then issue 3s are steampunk, Atlantean, Frankenstein. It's fun.
Okay, that's very cool. And that explains a lot the print in this case. Because at first I thought this is where it builds to, and there's more characters added on, but I didn't know it was their actual like one stories. Do they actually merge at some point?
Oh yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So it's all leading towards. I don't want to spoil it. But
No, you don't have to spoil it. I mean, so with your backstory and especially the award-winning Resilient One, what would you say are your words of wisdom for for any artist who's looking to go into the field of comic books as a writer or even drawing? So yeah, what would you say is your words of wisdom?
Oh, okay. Yeah. So thanks for mentioning that. Yeah. So Resilient did win best comic book from Sequential Magazine, which was super cool. I would say though, like for advice, just try and have an objective eye. Like I don't think that comic books is like the impossible task that I had built up when I was before I had got started in it. It is something that's doable, but I kind of liken it to like putting a backsplash in your kitchen. It's like, I don't know how to put in a backsplash, but I know how to like look at something and know if it's done right or done wrong.
Right.
And so you just have to have a willingness to tear things down and start over again, right? Like if you've messed up, you can't be afraid to, because you see people who do like home renovations and they look awesome. And you see people who do home renovations and they look like trash, right? Well, the person who did it and it doesn't look good, it's because they saw it. They're like, oh, that's not good enough. And they decided to keep it. You know what I mean? Right. So you just have to be hard on yourself. And when you see that something isn't working, you got to like throw that out and start over again. So don't be afraid to, throw that piece of paper in the garbage or scrap that whole project altogether. That's another thing is like with comic books, it's like, this is like a multi-year endeavor. At least that's been my experience. Is like when you start a project, you're working on it for, we started writing Cover of Darkness in 2018. Issue 1 just came out in stores in January. So it's like that was a long process to get it into stores finally. And same thing with Resilient. It's been years in the making. And you'll be collaborating with an artist for a long time. So make sure you choose someone that you can count on. That's in it.
No, very cool.
Be objective of your work and kind of be in it for the long haul and put your money where your mouth is. Like if you're gonna make books, spend some money on it. Hire an artist. It's like, to me, it's kind of like I've got like lots of analogies.
No, go ahead.
It's kind of like opening a pizza restaurant, right? Like if you want to open a pizza restaurant, you can't just like start, cooking it on, your oven at home. You actually gotta, you gotta rent some space. You gotta, buy
get
some
a decent
ovens.
oven. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Get some staff. Get
all the ingredients, and then because when you start making comics, you're becoming an entrepreneur. So like this is a business, and so you've got to treat it like that, and you've got to put some money out to make some money, right? And
absolutely,
it's just the reality of it.
Absolutely. Even because we met at the Toronto Comic Con, and even walking by, or anybody else walking by, like right away, there was nobody that just passed by and you just let them. Because sometimes you go in front of an artist and they're in their bubble or doing their things, which is fine. People come to them. But in this case, even with people around, you were firing like, hey, you need to check this out. And I was like, okay. And you sold it as soon as we got there, giving us the down low on who your characters were, where where they're heading, and without spoiling anything, you kind of had like your elevator pitch already kind of ready, but at the same time you like customize it for wherever you're going to talk to. So I thought that was great. Great on your behalf for sure.
Yeah, I kind of quickly realized that it wasn't enough to just make these books. I actually have to go out and sell them, you know, because
Right.
like I said, it is an investment, right? So I've invested this money into making these books. Now I've got
Right.
to turn around and let people know about it, right? And if I just sit there kind of twiddle my thumbs at a table at a convention,
Right.
not that many people are going to find out about it. So I've
Yeah.
actually got to, get up and talk to people about it. And that's one thing I'm really lucky is that I do enjoy that aspect of it, is like talking with people and just kind of getting to meet so many people and share my enthusiasm
Right.
for my books. And then that's it. That's all I can do is kind of put it out into the world. I don't have any expectations that anyone's going to buy my stuff, but I
Right.
just like to kind of talk to people and let them know what I've made.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the key point is that even if like you have 2 or 3 people maybe walk by or maybe not pick up anything, you'll at least have that one person that will love it, and then just spread it to whoever else is around who may even enjoy maybe the horror genre or maybe the action-packed genre. So if any of those categories fit the bill right away, they'll grab it. The artwork in these books are amazing. The artists from independent to now being within either Source Press or if not with Absolute Comics. I mean, these are 2 independent publishers that are definitely knocking out of the park, that are getting their name out there. And definitely if you get a chance to read Cover of Darkness, I highly suggest it. I mean, I love horror genre. I mean, with Brian Baugh and David, with Dan Mendoza, and having like the classic horror feel to it, kind of like the spooky, like you'd be reading it and you get not just the story, but you get like an experience as you go along with it, that I thought was amazing. And you definitely want to pick up Resilient 2 and Resilient 1 if you haven't read it yet. I mean, it is an amazing book. It's very inspiring for the most part, because you'd think, oh, this person will get these arms and kind of just knock everybody out, and it's like the superhero heroine with like you said, only relying on your arms. But no, there is a lot of backstory to all of it actually. So super excited for your second book. Can't wait to pick it up. And again, the links will be in the links below. Thank you again for coming on our show, and I definitely hope we have you again for many projects down the line. We do wish you so much success going forward. You definitely won us over, and we're a big fan of your work. If you've enjoyed this video, we highly suggest you hit that like button. If you're new to the channel, we also suggest you hit that subscribe button. This way you stay on top, especially when you have other artists on our show. This way you get to discover them and get to know these crazy cool stories. How we've usually had artists and illustrators and very few writers, and I think that's something we need to touch on more, is hearing where are these characters coming from, what's their backstory, where the personas are being created, and how you make these worlds. It's a crazy world and we love it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Ryan. It's been an absolute blast.
Awesome. Before we usually end things off, we usually ask our we usually daunt our guest with, can you give us one last pun before we go? It's not to disarm you in a moment of time there.
Geez.
Yeah.
You could act like a tree and leave.
There you go. There you have it, folks. Take it easy. Peace.